Hi, I'm Mike. I'm from Denver, but I've been living in Italy for quite some time now. I am the Service Learning and Host Family Coordinator for CIS Intercultural Study Abroad. I'm sitting down and I'm going to talk with a lot of people who have experienced the program that we offer in Siena to talk about study abroad in general and what their experiences have meant for the rest of their lives and how they've been impacted by those experiences. So I hope you enjoy these. And if you're interested in having a conversation with me, just go ahead and write to me at my email address that's here below. So enjoy, and hopefully see you all soon back here in Italy. Ciao. Okay, here I am again, and here we have Andrew. Andrew, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Andrew Barbagallo. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is I live 1 block away from Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
And I went to the Ohio State University,
The
the only. Exactly. I got my bachelor's and my master's there in Italian studies, and therefore I went to Italy with CIS back in 2011, the spring semester.
Mhm.
So coming up in like 2 months, it will be 10 years, I think, since I first landed in Italy, which is insane.
Yeah.
Decade.
Yeah.
Not feeling old.
All right. So yeah, I've learned with working with Ohio State students that you do need to put the V in front of there. I didn't know that before, as having not been from Ohio or.
And I had to learn all these things too, because I'm not originally from Ohio. I'm originally from Baltimore. But I learned quickly. You have to put that D there. It's very important.
Yes, it apparently is. Anyway, so you said a little bit about why you went to study abroad in Italy, because you were studying Italian studies, and I think if you're studying Italian studies, it's probably a good idea to eventually end up in Italy, right? Was
Oh,
there any other motivation for you to go to Italy? Had you always like, I'm dreaming of going to Italy, or was this something that came up through university and your
yeah,
studies?
yeah. I think I don't think I ever really got the travel bug necessarily until I would probably until late in high school, I would probably say college. Um, and I had never been abroad before. When I came to Siena, that was the first time ever that I took an international flight. First time having a passport, and
Mm-hmm.
um, so for me, I was really excited just to try something new. I have Italian heritage, so that's always great to kind of go back to the place where your ancestors come from. Um, but in general, I especially when I was younger, I just wanted some new experiences. I mentioned that I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I went all the way out to Ohio State. Didn't know anybody out there, so it was just, I guess, precluding in a way the fact that then I was going to go to Siena, where I also did not know anybody.
Yeah.
Um, so beyond just language learning, I really just wanted to try something new, get out there and experience a different culture, a different part of the world. And the fact that it would be a place where ancestors of mine had been from just sweetened the deal a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus food and wine. Who doesn't like good food and wine?
Yeah. Those are maybe, yeah, nobody wants to say those are the reasons why that they go, but honestly,
It's okay.
you shouldn't be embarrassed by that.
No, because it's world class cuisine
Yeah.
and the wine is delicious. So there should be no shame in anyone's
No,
game in saying that you're going to Italy for
not at all.
food.
Not at all. I agree. Okay, so I work, with students once they get to Siena. So that's obviously where I ended up meeting you and working with you and so many other students. So talk a little bit about your experience in Siena. Maybe what was surprising, and maybe something like what was difficult?
Yeah, so I I mean the experience, it's just you get kind of thrown right in, which I find to be really helpful because it's just, it's not done in a, you're on your own kind of way, but but it's kind of like this facilitated immersion, and it starts with day one when you get off the bus from the airport
Mm,
and you go with your host family, you get to stay with them. And so while, it, while that can be, a little intimidating and frightening, it's still exciting. I was lucky in that I had already taken Italian previously, not fluent, but proficient enough.
mm,
I could get around. Um, and so that's always helpful. And language was, while difficult for everybody, and I certainly had moments where I was like, just want to speak English. Like I'm just not, I'm just not getting it. Those you push through those, and um, I've learned over the years that it's okay if you can't form a complete sentence. Just get the idea out, and people are
mm.
more than happy to help you out along the way. It, really, what I found, um, I wouldn't say that this wasn't difficult, but what I found was really helpful and sticks out to me the most is that I, especially a month or so in, I really started to feel part of the community in Siena. And that's what really, for me, always sticks with me.
Mm.
And it was both, through the school and having classes and just being around the city and doing excursions, but it was also the volunteer service that we do. That's really what gets you
What
just
did you do?
so. I
I
taught.
probably have records of it, but in 2011, if I go look back at those, do you remember what you did?
I did. I taught a lot of English. I did. I worked with, I think there were second or third graders. I did that. I also worked with two high school courses that was a little bit more, one was more conversational, where we talked about, they were talking about Italy unifying in the
Mm.
1800s. And at the same time, the Civil War was happening. So we used that. We had a discussion in English about that in order to make kind of like a
You probably didn't
comparison.
expect that. when
No,
you,
that was I had to brush up on my Civil War history a little bit. Um, and then just like a regular conversation. And then I also helped with doing conversational English for adults that happened in the evenings.
Mhm.
And
The
I,
language partners, yes.
yes,
Yeah.
and that was the high school courses, and working with adults was great because then I was working with people who were much closer to my peers,
Mm.
and they were Italian. So, I made friends through doing that. And, outside of, the classroom, they would be like, hey, do you want to, grab a bite or grab a drink and, hang out? And that's what, really helped me so much. If there was ever a time where I was feeling, a little bit homesick or frustrated with language or not understanding something, it was the moment when I felt like I started having friends and peers in Siena, when it all just kind of clicked for me. And, I still keep in touch with, some of those friends that I made,
Oh, that's awesome.
Italian friends that I made
Yeah.
back then. So that really, for the experience for me, was always the
Mhm.
best. Um,
You talked about like, throwing people into the fire. We do our best to think of as many possible ways to ease people into situations that are not the most comfortable situations, but are they going to guarantee like the immersion experience and the possibility to be in contact with people. And there's always a little bit of an element of awkwardness to that. It's inevitable, but we're constantly thinking of ways to, okay, it has to be safe first of all, and then maybe we can ease them in here, and then we just walk away and let it go. So anyway, you went then from being a dude without a passport to having quite an amazing job that is like study abroad level 10. Talk about what your job is, and then maybe also if there are any things that you brought over from your first experience abroad to what you do now.
Yeah. So I work at a company that's called Meridian International Center. It's a nonprofit in Washington D.C. And Meridian itself is a diplomacy center where we bring global leaders together to build mutual understanding between the U.S. and other countries, as well as to bring global leaders together that can discuss shared global challenges. We call it kind of like we call it public diplomacy. As we think of diplomacy, we think ambassadors and protocol and right? But that's diplomacy. By and large, mostly happens just people to people talking to each other. So
I mean, think of every study abroad student could be defined as a diplomat.
Yeah, absolutely. Diplomacy is just whenever you get people together from different cultures and they break bread and have a conversation. Diplomacy happens there. So specifically, what I do is I design and implement international exchange programs that are funded mostly by the U.S. Department of State. So we are either working directly with the State Department or we are working with one of the American embassies abroad. Now, most of the time when we hear international exchange program, we'll immediately think of study abroad or international education because we hear about that a lot and for good reason. Mm-hmm. It's one of the primary ways that we're able to, learn and build mutual understanding between cultures is through education. But what I do is a little bit different. Sometimes we do some education, but a lot of the times the program that we're doing, the audiences are early to mid-level professionals. Mm-hmm. And they're coming here to the United States for a short-term program, anywhere from, I would average like a week or 2 to 4 months on average. And a lot of what we're creating for them are opportunities for leadership development, skills training, meeting their peers, etc. To provide an example of what I'm working on now, I work on an Afghan leadership development program for Afghan women. And they've all been identified to be future leaders, as well as having dedicated commitment to their community, whether that's just their town or village or whether it's Afghanistan in general. And so what I do is I help to create these itineraries for them when they come to the United States, and I coordinate that with the embassy in Kabul. So, I decide where do they go when they come here? Who do they meet with? What do they do?
It's very similar to everything that we do. I mean,
exactly. It's the who, what, when, where, how, why, right? Yeah. So that's so I do that. It's not it's not through an education institution necessarily, but it's still similar and attached to that in that they're certainly learning. It's just not necessarily with the school. Mm-hmm. In terms of how my experience in Siena has been helpful for this, I mean, they're such similar experiences. Many differences, of course, but what's so helpful is just having been on one of these programs and understanding that you can have the best content, whether that's a class or a speaker or whoever, you have the best content ever. But if you can't get the participants there and get them there as seamlessly as possible, or your students there as seamlessly as possible, that content doesn't really get to them. So my level of appreciation for the logistics and administration required for these programs. Thank you. Oh my God. It's intense.
It's nice to hear. That is,
Yeah,
a lot of times, after all of the organization, you get to a hotel and somebody's like, "I'm cold." Okay.
and, and meanwhile, what we're dealing with to get to that "I'm cold" comment was helping you get a visa, ensuring you had an international flight, making sure that a bus is contracted to get you from the airport and then to it's a whole the back end of it.
Yeah.
It requires a lot, and so seeing what a well-run program looks like,
Hmm.
even as a student of that and a beneficiary of that, it helps. It helped me when I started in this field to understand how important it was to make sure that those elements ran smoothly, so that the content that's created, that the students and participants are here for, they are able to get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they're thinking about all of the other things, ideally, if it works well, they can be focused on the thing that we want them to be focused on, which, in
Mhm.
our case, ends up mostly being, the culture or whatever content courses they're taking, and not the other things. Then sometimes you get the one who is cold, and you can say, well, maybe if you put on your jacket. What would you say? So, you said that you weren't really too like, oh, I'm definitely going to study abroad in my life. But what would you say to now to a student, maybe at Ohio State, at the Ohio State, uh, who is in a language class, not in a language class? What would you say to them about study abroad?
Yeah. There are always study abroad or other. There are a million reasons not to do something
Mm.
or anything. Um, but I think that study abroad experiences are such a good investment in your future self. Um, I mean, with me, it's pretty clear correlation correlation there. Right? Like, I wouldn't have my career if I didn't ever study
Mm.
abroad. But I'm in a very niche field. I still think study abroad in general is pretty niche. Um, so for everybody else, it's like, well, that's not my career path trajectory here. It's still such a good investment in itself because not enough can be said about the soft skills that you gain, such as cross cultural competency.
Mm.
And whether you are working with international clients or not, I mean, cross cultural competency is a skill that everybody needs to have. And, if you look at job descriptions now, many of them mention something similar to cross cultural competency.
Hmm.
And the reason why is, one, we're a more global world, no matter your field, we're all connected. Um, but even if you take that element out and you just think about how much more, even in the US, people come from all over the place and settle into different city. You
Hmm.
know, Washington, I understand it's a very transient city, so we have people from everywhere. But even Denver, there are
Yeah, I mean,
people.
I can think of a lot of different ways.
Yeah,
Going to the supermarket in Denver is a very cross-cultural interaction or thing to do. Yeah.
exactly. And it's a great thing. I think it's one of the strengths of the United States in general is that there is so much cultural diversity, and not in so many different ways. That it could be ethnically, that's the obvious one. But if you even look at how different the Northeast is from the Southeast, which
Hmm.
is different than the Northwest, which is different than the Midwest,
Hmm.
if you have all of these different people that come from all different backgrounds, different regions, different cities, and they're all thrown into an office together, you've got to learn how to work with all these different people.
Yeah.
And that's where your study abroad investment kicks in, because you need to, and you need to be able to understand that you're in a different culture, in a different place when you study abroad. And, you know, sometimes, whether something is new or you're like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that, you eventually learn to just get to a place of the post office is a scary place in Italy, and that's just the way it is. It's just almost like an acceptance of it's the way it is, and I'm going to work the best that I can with what I got.
Mm.
It, that is a soft skill that then transfers over to your professional life.
How to get in
And
an argument with the person at the post office to get the thing that you need to get done. I mean,
exactly. And we are about to enter the holiday season, so that's a skill many of us might have to start flexing. Um, but even just you know, you're working with somebody, coworker, client, whoever, not seeing eye to eye on something. Look, the job's got to get done. So you have to, you know, in having that skill, you
without
can
an
find
argument,
your common
it's
ground.
better to not argue if possible, right?
Right. That's where your diplomacy skills come in, and you work your way around that. Um, so anyway, it really is an investment in yourself, and that you're going to learn something, and even in a way you may not ever fully consciously realize you are utilizing those skills in the future in some way. Plus, just the fact that it's such a great experience. I mean, my memories of Siena have been some of the most fond memories that I've ever had.
Hmm.
um, and it's fueled, you know, my love for travel. I went back to Italy. I went to Lecce, actually.
Yeah.
Great place. And it- they're just memories that you cherish for a long time. So while there are a million different reasons to not go, I would say that there are, 2 million more reasons why you should, and it benefits you in ways maybe you can't see right now, but trust me, it's such a good benefit to you. And the experience that CSPR provides specifically is just phenomenal. So,
All right. Thank you. Bye.
thanks so much. See you, Mike.